Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Asheville Vedic Astrology YouTube channel, the best Vedic astrology YouTube channel out there, according to 9 out of every 10 astrologers you will ever meet. It's science. It's out there. Everybody knows it. You can look it up. Everybody knows it. And my name is Fernando Raul Castro Alvarez, and I form part of the 4-year Asheville Vedic Astrology apprenticeship course. And today, Ryan Kursak, my teacher, has invited me here to talk to you guys about how the planets function for a Sagittarius Lagna person. And in this video, we will be discussing the role of Chandradeva, or the moon, for a person who was born with Sagittarius rising. If you've seen the previous videos in this series, you already know what it means to be born with Sagittarius ascending. So for Sagittarius Lagna, the moon rules the 8th house, and the 8th house only, because as you know, the moon as well as the sun only has one house, because she only has regency over one sign, which is Cancer. And before we get into the 8th, first we need to understand what the moon is. And boy, do we have homework there, because even though the moon is the fastest planet, even though the moon is the smallest planet, the moon is so important in our life, because the moon is basically our soul mind. She's manas. She's basically our individualized consciousness. She's our attention and our emotions. And the moon, the moon is not necessarily a malefic, and it's not necessarily a benefic. She will vary according to what phase she is in a chart, depending on what titi she is in. If she is in a Shukla Paksha stage, or a waxing stage, then the moon will gravitate towards being a benefic. If she is in a Krishna Paksha state, or the half that tends to be darkening, she will tend to be a malefic. So new moons, in essence, are malefics, and full moons, in essence, are benefic. With more light, benefic; with less light, malefic. However, we have to pay attention also to where the moon is, its dignity, and most importantly, if it's alone, if it's with planets, if it's receiving aspects, if it's giving aspects, if it's void. Of course, it's very important to see the state of the moon more than just the essential dignity. We have to see the accidental dignity to really ascertain the quality of that moon. At the same time, the moon is a feminine planet. It's very obvious, just like Venus. Feminine planets are the type of planets that want to be part of something bigger, that are planets that want to provide support to other people. They are the type of planets that like to make other people feel good, feel, that they are taken care of, feel that other people are loved, and that sort of thing. However, female planets are not the type of planets that are always, in a good predisposition, in terms of that a female planet will only do things whenever she is in the mood to do things, contrary to male planets, which will do practically anything, anytime, if it's needed. At the same time, the moon, in the metaphor of the planetary cabinet, is the queen of the planets. She is basically the consort, no, not the consort, the wife, the official consort, the wife of the king, which is the sun. And we have to remember that the luminaries are the king and queen of the planetary cabinet. And as the queen, she has a strong influence on her husband, the king. She is basically the consciousness. She is basically the power behind the throne. She's basically that whispers, that counsel, that female energy that will guide the more active principle of the sun to be a good king for the kingdom. And at the same time, the queen, surprisingly, the moon is of a Vaishya class. Many times people think that the moon is a Brahman, but the Brahmans are only Jupiter and Venus. The moon is a Vaishya, just like Mercury. And the moon is a Vaishya because she likes to measure things. She likes to move around. She likes to quantify things. She's always, paying attention to what she can do to improve the kingdom, to improve the conditions of the people she rules over it through the power that she has over the king. At the same time, the moon is a sattvic planet, which in the Bhagavad Gita is associated to the principle of benevolence, of harmony, of goodness, okay? And the moon is obviously virtuous because the moon is sattvic because she simply is. She is the universal mother. She is the principle that gives everything to her children whenever the children ask for it. And that's why the moon is such has such a benefic quality in terms of its sattvic predisposition. And at the same time, the moon is both of a Vata and a Kapha predisposition. You know, Vata is basically air, and Kapha is basically earth. Vata is the combination of Akasha, or Orgona, as some call it, or ether and wind. And Kapha is basically the combination of water and earth. And these are very important in Ayurveda, which is the Vedic science of diet and health. And being a Vata planet, this means that the moon is able to move from place to place. It means that the moon is able to transport things. The moon is able to move from one place to another. And being a Kapha planet at the same time, this means that the moon is able to provide structure and support to other planets in the planetary cabinet. So basically, we have these qualities of the moon. And as we can see, the moon is very sensitive. It's very delicate, but at the same time is of great importance for us. So if we were going to describe the moon in keywords, they would be soul mind, they would be individualized consciousness, they would be mood, emotions, and attentions. Now, as we said before, she's going to rule the 8th, which is called Maranashtana, which is the house of death. But actually, the 8th is not necessarily the house of death. The 8th is basically the 8th is basically the house of longevity, because we're all going to die. So, you know, it's a matter of semantics, obviously, but it's better to name it the house of longevity, of how many breaths we have in this current incarnation. Now, the 8th is obviously Adushtana. The 8th is obviously one of the houses of the Moksha Trikona. The 8th is also one of the succeedent houses. She is also one of the impressionable houses. And to a lesser known degree, she's also a Chatur Ashra house and Abna Apachaya house, which are terms that are rarely used in Vedic astrology videos, but that there are used in the classics, specifically in Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra and the Brihad Jataka. But the 8th is basically the house of mutual assets more than just the house of longevity. It has to do with sudden ups and downs and transformations, and obviously the mortality associated to our incarnation. Now, what will happen when the moon rules the 8th? How can we bring together all these significators? Well, basically, when the moon rules the 8th for a Sagittarius Lagna person, you know, the mind of the person will be naturally inclined towards 8th house issues. The mind of the Jataka that has Sagittarius ascendant will naturally gravitate towards mutual possessions, dealing with other people's possessions, with other people's monies, with other people's problems, with other people's responsibilities. You know, at the same time, we must remember that the Lagna Lord gets exalted here. So, you know, Sagittarius Lagna, once again, has a lot of pays a lot of attention to other people, pays a lot of attention to other people's problems. You know, having Venus ruling the 6th, you know, enemies are going to be our friends. We love obstacles. You know, we're going to have an affinity towards that. Having Mercury in the 7th, you know, that brings a lot of polyvalence to other people. You know, having the Lagna Lord getting exalted in the 8th in Cancer here, that gives us, you know, a very good predisposition towards counseling, but at the same time dealing with 8th house issues. You know, and this is from the mundane perspective. From a more esoteric perspective, you know, the mind will gravitate towards esoteric stuff, things that have to do with the occult. And at the same time, things that have to do with mortality, that maybe have to do with longevity, with, you know, strange things, just like, you know, astrology maybe, or esoteric stuff, you know, that sort of thing. The mind will be there. So if you're Sagittarius Lagna and you're watching this video, it might have to do something with the moon. At the same time, for a Sagittarius Lagna person, having the 8th ruled by the moon, it means that our mood and emotions tend to go through sudden ups and downs. Sudden ups and downs in our emotions, in our moods, in our state of mind is just part of who we are. And we tend to manage it quite effectively. That obviously depends on the dignity of the moon and the accidental dignity of the moon. But in essence, it's the idea that sudden ups and downs are not, something that Sagittarius Lagna people might have problem with. They might not want to deal with it, but they're not going to be, deeply shaken by these sudden ups and downs. As some other astrologers have said, if you have a strong 8th house, a strong 8th lord, you can deal with change. You can deal with sudden change. You can deal with sudden ups and downs. And having the ascendant lord exalted here, in principle, they are capable of dealing with sudden ups and downs that go through the outside world and the inner world of our emotions and moods. At the same time, our individualized consciousness, which is the moon, has an intense 8th house aura to it, which at the same time emphasizes what I just said. Our emotions, our attention, our soul, mind, and individualized consciousness is going to be drawn to these 8th house issues that have to do with the occult, with mutual assets, and overall mortality and longevity. And the 8th is seen through the filter of Cancer, which has to do with the filter of security, of emotional capacity and survival through mutual aspect, through sudden ups and downs, through mortality. And this once again adds to the cliche description that modern astrology has about Sagittarius, about these extroverted individuals that just throw themselves out in life to get adventure and just triumph, right? Well, having this 8th house predisposition gives the Sagittarius native the ability to deal with things that change quite drastically, like, for example, just traveling, like Sagittarius means, or just going to war, like Sagittarius mean, or just, facing life with bravado and with that dharma, with that fire that Sagittarius represents. They have the capacity, the emotional capacity to survive things that other people emotionally might not do as well. So we must remember that the moon gets exalted in the 6th in Taurus and gets debilitated in the 12th in Scorpio. And what this means is that, we have to take these 8th house issues and transform them into a 6th house issue. The idea of taking all these issues that have to do with the esoteric, with the occult, with mutual aspects to a service-oriented area, to the idea that I serve other people, that I fight my problems with these 8th house energies. The idea that we need to work with these things in the outer world to really improve those areas of the 8th. But at the same time, the moon gets debilitated in the 12th, which is quite interesting, because what it means is that if we ignore these 8th house callings, if we ignore this gravity that holds us and draws us towards these 8th house issues, and we just terminate it in the 12th, we're going to have problems. At the same time, it represents that sudden ups and downs, we can deal with them, but sudden ups and downs in expenditure can cause some sort of problems. So at the same time, we see here that the 8th house emotional issues have to be taken out towards others in terms of service, in terms of dealing with these problems, in terms of just ignoring them, just, cutting with them, just bring them insight to our psychological mind, or just paying someone to deal with them, which once again adds to the idea of a Sagittarius being an extroverted person who deals with things, who just throws themselves towards, adventure, toward fixing these things, because they have the mind and the emotional capacity to deal with all these things, okay? So basically, this is my video dealing with how the moon works for the 8th house for a Sagittarius Lagna person. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them here. I will drop by from time to time to answer them. And, I hope you like this video, and I'll see you in the next one, which will be the last video, where we will be discussing the role of the sun for a Sagittarius Lagna person. So see you in the next, and I wish you strength, serenity, and wisdom to all. Take care.